if we're out for a walk, I'm adding deposits just by recalling randomly, or I'm telling my dog to drop, or I'm telling my dog to heel, or whatever, just randomly. And even in those moments, I'm filling that, deposit up, and making that account as deep as I can, because in the time where I'm like, I need it, it can't be the first time that your dog has heard it in this walk or on this training session. And if you're out for a walk with your dog, it's like you two are on a date.
Oh, that's cool. Love that.
Yeah.
And you see this, right? Like, you see this at group classes. You see it with clients where you're like, hey, reward that. And the client's like,
what?
Like, look at her.
Yeah.
What am I rewarding? It's like, pay attention to your dog.
Welcome to the new episode of She Gets It Done. Make sure to hit subscribe, comment or like. We hope you love this week's episode. Enjoy! Hey, welcome back to a new episode of She Gets It Done. We are super excited to introduce to you Brent Dry from the Canine Company based in Melbourne. And today we're going to talk all about why group classes are so good for your dog. We're going to let Brent explain most about himself. So here we go. I hope you love this episode.
Hi, Brent. Welcome to our podcast. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you, Tony. Going great.
So you own the Canine Company in Melbourne. How about we start with you letting us know a bit about yourself and what you do for training?
Sure. I think we started the Canine Company around about 2008. And my wife at the time had a business which was doing dog grooming, which we still do. And also some, we'll call it behavior modification, just going into people's houses and helping them out. And at the time, we weren't really thinking about group classes. I trained a dog that I had up in Queensland, up in Noosa, with a gentleman, Steve Dawson. And I used to go to his group classes, and I really liked them. They were good fun. They were very, very different to what we do, but they were always good fun. And we were sort of like, oh, well, why don't we start doing some group classes? And I think our first session, we had 7 people, and I think 6 of them were grooming clients. And we just went, hey, what have you got on Sunday? Can you come down? We want to have some people. And that kind of worked out. And then, on a busy day, on a Sunday, for instance, we might have, up to 100 people throughout the Sunday morning coming along. So we do everything now, from group classes to in-home consultations. We run workshops, seminars. We've got some products and that sort of thing that we sell. So that's kind of the rundown on the Canine Company.
Do you think that every dog owner should be doing group classes with their dog?
I think, given the opportunity that, and if it's possible, and if it's a well-run dog training class, then I think probably 95% of the population that do own dogs, there's a spot for you in a well-run class. And the other 5% that it won't suit, there's just issues with those dogs, because maybe that percentage is high because they could be an older dog, they could have a history of showing like serious aggression, and it's just not beneficial for that dog. It's too stressful for that dog. It's too stressful for the owner. So, there are definitely dogs and people that it won't necessarily benefit from, but I would say the absolute majority, yes, it will. And even those ones where it doesn't work, and where it's not the perfect fit, I still think working around dogs in a safe area is where the benefits are, and because we have this, so to go back a little bit to the second week that we ran our group classes, we had a guy come down. His name was Paul, and he had a dog called Winston. And Winston, even to this day, is still the most serious dog aggression case that we've ever seen.
Oh, wow.
Like, he was just off tap, and he was created that way. It was really unfortunate because Paul did all the right things. He literally went to a group class, like a puppy school, and then another group class, and then another group class. So he went to 3 before they found us. And so the dog was created, like you could see why when you heard the stories, you could see why Winston was the way he was, So even having this amazingly aggressive towards other dogs, 6 weeks after starting with us, he did like a recall on lead, but Paula dropped the lead and walked away like 4 meters. Don't go too far because it could go bad.
Yeah.
And but Winston went straight to him, and everybody at the class just clapped. And Paul's like, "You're clapping because he didn't kill any of your dogs." And we're like, "Yeah, pretty much, Paul."
Take the win.
In regards to the group class sort of scenario, like who should do it? Like, I really think, given the correct circumstances of group classes, I really think everyone can do it. I think everybody with a dog should be attending some sort of a group class if it is well run and, if you can work at your dog's level. And I think that's one of the keys as well.
Mm.
So would you recommend, even if another owner has other problems with their dogs, say with the owner that you just recommended had aggression issues, you still think that group classes are still a great thing just to do on the side anyway, to build relationship and your basic obedience, just to even help along with those issues as well?
Yeah, I do. I look at the way I've started to sort of talk to people about aggression or reactivity or whatever sort of words you want to throw around it. I just now sit there and just say it's like a distraction. Like, another dog is just a distraction to your dog. Whether it's coming from fear or whatever it might be, or your dog just wants to chase it, it's the same principles that we kind of need to go through to get the dog through to the other side, where now the dog is paying more attention to me and less attention to the other dog. Mm-hmm. It's the same as if your dog really, really, really wants to go and chase bikes, or really wants to go and play with the kids at the playground, they're just levels of distraction to me. And I think when I say that to clients, it's sort of, they've got this thing that they've built up and they've built up and they've built up. And when I go, "Hey, it's just a distraction, don't worry about it," they're like, "Oh yeah, it kind of is." Mm. So when you've got those sorts of dogs that are super excited or super aroused in and around other dogs, it's just a distraction. So sometimes we can have one dog and they get fixated totally on another dog, but we could bring that same dog down to a group class where there's 6 dogs or 10 dogs or 20 dogs, and now they can't target a specific dog, especially if they're all doing the same thing. If one dog's kind of off playing with a ball by himself, it's like, okay, well, that one stands out, right? So that dog with the issue might target towards that dog or orientate towards that dog. But if they're all just walking along and doing loose lead walking, then they're all doing a sit stay or a drop stay, or if they're all doing a recall, they can't specifically target an individual dog. And I call that diffused awareness, right? So Tyler, your good friend Tyler, Newton, so who was on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, he's a legend. He brought that up on one of his podcasts. He was talking to Forrest Mickey about it, and he said, "Oh, Brent wrote." Well, I think Forrest said, Brent wrote a blog about this thing, and they couldn't remember. I said, "Yeah, it's diffused awareness," and that's kind of what it is with a group class, where you can have a dog come down who could be a little bit over aroused or stimulated by other dogs, and now there's more of them, and it can actually quite often reduce that level of stress because they can't become singularly focused on something. So I think, I think group classes can benefit those dogs for sure.
Yeah. And so what would be some of the common issues that you often see with dog owners that come to your group classes?
We get a massive range of dogs to start with. So we get 8-week-old puppies, everything from an 8-week-old puppy up to a, 8-year-old, dog that's just been rehomed because the owners have gone overseas or whatever it might be, right? So the way that we kind of look at something along those lines is, what's the relationship that these guys have? Are they building it? Are they working on it? Does the dog care about them? And if we can get the dog to care more about the person than anything else that's going on in and around them, then that often like cuts issues in half. So my dog pulls on the lead. Well, now your dog is into you and wants to be with you, and you have cool stuff for the dog. So then all of a sudden your dog's not, wanting to just leave you and go and play with another dog, or I'm just going to sniff this ground because you don't care about me. So I think everything from jumping to barking to pulling on the lead, I would say those are the main issues that people sort of come down with. But then what happens quite often is they'll see another dog, or they'll see one of our more advanced classes, and then they're like, oh, but my dog doesn't do that. I want them to do that.
Yeah.
So then what I say, it's like you don't know what you don't know. And I think sometimes that happens with dog trainers or our pet dog handlers.
Definitely.
They don't know what their dogs can do.
Yeah.
And then they start to see what they can do. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, so by teaching my dog maybe some healing work, now they're really not pulling on the lead, because sometimes I ask them to heal and they do that for 10 steps and I reward them and they're like, that was fun. And then they're still into me. So now that pulling on the leash is gone and we've developed this beautiful relationship between me and my dog. So those would probably be three things. So definitely barking. Like, people get frustrated with their dogs barking, which is, often we can fix that by fixing their leash handling. Like, I know you guys are good at that. Like, hey, let's teach you how to walk the dog properly on a leash.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Get some engagement with the dog. And I think that's kind of the main sort of ones, really, pulling on the lead and barking and just not being engaged with them.
Yeah. Yeah, the engagement thing is huge. Like, because I run a lot of group classes as well, and I did your course, and I tried that for a while, and I'm just me, so that was way too intensive for me in the end. But I do definitely I get those as well, and then I get the random ones that say, "Oh, my dog, I don't know, doesn't want to go in his crate." I'm like, okay, cool, but unfortunately we can't cover that at group class. That's too specific, but we might cover it a bit, and I do think group classes are not just for the dog, they're giant confident builders for their handlers as well, because I get a lot of owners that are a bit shy. Like, I'm running a reactive dog class again this Saturday, and most of the work we do is so repetitive. It's just repeat, but you see the owners grow, and because the owners feel better, the dogs are better. And then that's what I also think, like, everyone should do group classes at some stage. Just even if your dog is well behaved, are they also well behaved when there's 10 other dogs around?
Yeah.
To me, that doesn't count if you say, oh, my dog does well, unless, and then the whole list of exceptions comes.
Yeah. I actually think that, and I've heard this from countless clients, and I know this for myself, the people that do dog training, and whether it's individual stuff, but specifically group class, because the group class side of it, what happens is there's all of these, now there's conflicts between other people and other dogs, so the dogs now have options, right? And I think the people who do group classes, I honestly believe this, is they end up with a better relationship between them and their dog. Like, I see it all the time. So that's, that is one of the massive benefits for it.
Because they have to deal with their dog while another dog is popping off.
Or it's they form this way that they can communicate with their dog. So now maybe there's a dog over here, but I've formed this relationship with my dog, right? And now I've got a form of communication where I can just go, hey, buddy, like, can you just come back here? And this can happen in the house. This could happen when you're in the front yard or the backyard, and the dog's like, sure, I can do that. So all of a sudden they can go more places. So they develop these deeper bonds. They develop these deeper relationships. If you've got a dog that's an absolute pain in the ass, where are you taking that dog? Like, these are the ones that get up at 4 a.m. to go for a walk so they don't encounter anybody, right? But like, that's not a beautiful bond forming relationship with the dog. Now it's just chore. Whereas if you've got a dog that
I think it's almost isolating, almost like you isolate yourself from the world by doing that. Yeah.
Which in turn will make the problem worse.
Yeah, because you're just feeding it over and over again as avoiding, and you're not actually dealing with the problem that's going on.
Yeah. So by doing group classes and those sorts of things, you form this relationship with your dog where you can start to trust them more in public. You figure out what the triggers are as well. So maybe your dog is a little bit breed specific, where I don't like these types of dogs. And then you're out in public and you're sitting at the cafe, and then you see like a specific dog A that my dog doesn't like walking down the road. And you're like, hey, buddy, what are you up to? And you get their attention. This dog walks past and you give them a little piece of bacon or whatever, right? So all of a sudden the Bernese or the like whatever dog, the little Shih Tzu Terrier walks past, and your dog's still looking at you and engaging. And then you just go back to your conversation. Then the golden retriever walks past, and your dog's like, well, it's a golden retriever. Like, so it gives you these coping mechanisms, but this form of communication that you can have with your dog. And I think that's also one of those benefits for sure of group classes. I really think that it deepens the relationship, that you have with your dog.
I think as well, it's also a really good opportunity, like you said, to work on these issues, but it's in such a controlled environment. Like you can work around all these different dogs in a way that you couldn't if you were trying to work at like a dog park. You can't control dogs not rushing up to them or, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's important as well.
Yeah. And whether you've got a dog that, that biases towards aggression, or whether you've got like this super timid dog that just rolls over all the time, like you want to build confidence. And how do we build confidence? By doing it in a safe environment where we're going to be able to succeed. Yes, you need to be challenged, but that's cool. We do that every day in a group class, Bring your dogs in closer, take them further away. Bring your dogs in closer, take them further away. Recall a dog past this dog, recall a dog past that dog. So you're constantly building confidence with these dogs that are coming through. But if you go out on the street or you go for a walk through the park, and then there's people with their dogs off lead that have zero control, and then all of a sudden, a dog, that friendly dog that we all know, comes, bounding up to your dog, and your dog's super timid, and your dog rolls over on its back, and it's like, shit, come on, buddy, like we don't have to do this. You could just walk past the dog, like. So we're building foundations, we're building these coping mechanisms in our dogs, where all I want to do is I want to build confidence in my dog, show them the things that I want them to be able to do. And we do that, in a safe space.
Yeah, and Tyler kind of mentioned, like, to go back to the podcast that we did, is that by building up that trust on those few little incidences where something may happen, like a negative interaction, like a dog rushing up, if you built those strong foundations, then your dog is more likely to be able to handle that 1 or 2% of the time that something doesn't go the way you would have wanted it to go.
Yeah, and of course I agree with Tyler, right? Like, why wouldn't you? But to add on to that a little bit, it's like when I am out for a walk with my dog, the first time my dog hears a recall could be 18 seconds after I've left my property. First time my dog gets told to drop, it's within the first minute or so of the walk, because if I haven't sort of gone, hey, like there's opportunities for rewards here, or we're out for a walk, but there might be things that I still might ask you to do. Because if you go out for a walk and then half an hour later a dog comes out of a driveway and charges at you, and you need to tell your dog to drop because you want to go and grab this other dog, you're like, drop. And the dog's like, it's been out for half an hour. They've had no like sort of muscle memory in this duration of being out with you. So they're probably not going to do it, right? So they're just going to be sitting there and just going, well, I'm not going to do that. So I haven't sort of been in the mindset of, doing obedience or listening to you, because we're just out for a sniff and we're out for a wander. And
they've been zoned out for the last 30 minutes.
Yeah. So I think that's also one of the things that I'd add on to what Tyler says is like, Absolutely. Like we were creating, he was talking about like money in the bank or something, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, like these deposits, and then sometimes we withdraw. And it's the same thing. Like if we're out for a walk, I'm adding deposits just by recalling randomly, or I'm telling my dog to drop, or I'm telling my dog to heel, or whatever, just randomly. And even in those moments, I'm filling that, deposit up, and making that account as deep as I can, because in the time where I'm like, I need it, it can't be the first time that your dog has heard it in this walk or on this training session.
I think that's a huge issue for people on walks, because when they think obedience, that's separate from, right? They don't mesh it into each other. It's like, oh, but now I'm walking. And there is so much information out there at the moment about enrichment and snifaris, and I'm all for it. But I got roasted on the internet a few weeks ago, months ago maybe, because I did this video where I said, all right, 3 rules for loose leash walking. Don't let your dog zigzag. Don't let your dog pull everywhere, and don't stop every time your dog stops. Really super basic things. Man, I got roasted because how dare I not let the dog sniff? I said, I didn't say you can't let your dog sniff, but I want some rules in the walk. And people just lost it. I deleted it actually from quite a few places because I couldn't deal with all the positive onlys coming for me and the pet owners coming for me. And I was like, this was not intended at all. But that's the same. Like a walk doesn't just have to be, let's put the flexi on and I won't say anything for the next 30 minutes. I'll be on my phone. It's like, oh, it's call back or reward natural check-ins, or let's do a quick engagement game. Like do something else with your dog.
I think it has to be that way to me. Like I really do. We have this thing and we call it dating and dogs. And if you're out for a walk with your dog, it's like you two are on a date.
Oh, that's cool. Love that.
Yeah.
That's like we say this to clients. We say it in a group class. We call it dating and dogs. Because imagine if you went and sat, and you see this, right? Like you'll see this at group classes. You see it with clients where you're like, hey, reward that. And the client's like,
what?
Like, look at her. What am I rewarding? It's like, pay attention to your dog. Because imagine going, you go on a date with your partner and you walk into the cafe and you sit down and you haven't seen them. You're like, hey, how was your day? And they're like, yeah, it's really good. Yeah. And they're on their phone. Or imagine how long would a blind date last if you did that? You're like, I'm out of here. Like, this is just ridiculous. But we do it with our dogs, and then we're just like, hey, you need to check in with me now. And they're like, I've been trying to check in with you for 10 minutes. Like,
and you ignored me. So now it's my turn.
So like now we're done and I'm just going to sniff, or I'm going to find I'm going to get my flirt on with this dog over there because I was trying to interact with you and you brushed me off. So now I'm going to go and see what this beautiful little Labrador is doing,
And then that obviously leads into like the pulling on lead and all of those issues, because you just haven't created any value in yourself, right? You just created value in everything else going around.
Yeah. Like that's like, it's the basis of a beautiful relationship, right? Like behavior is behavior. And if you are in a relationship with a significant other or with a friend or with a family member or with a coworker, and you acknowledge what they do, it strengthens the relationship. Like if you get home and, whatever, I've made the bed and my partner's like, oh, you made the bed. I'm like, well, my dog's unmade it 4 times already, But it's, but if you acknowledge the little things, those little things continue to happen. It's the same with, for instance, with our dogs. If you acknowledge the little things, they just continue to happen. So if I'm out for a walk and my dog is sniffing, we let them sniff. And then they look at us and I'm like, hey, baby, what are you doing? And they come back and you give them a pat and a cuddle, and then they go back to sniff, but then they check in with you again. So I think it's, it's super important. Yeah, I've got nothing wrong with what you said. I think it's good.
Yeah. Awesome. So do you think there's some common misconceptions about group classes? And if so, do you think we should debunk them? So like things like group classes aren't suitable for certain breeds, or they're boring, or they're not catered to everyone, and that like dogs don't just stop learning after 5 weeks? Like, there's certain ones that you think are going around?
I think there's a few issues with group classes in some regards, and I think one of the main issues with group classes is the single breed group classes. So, like X dog club, whatever, that German Shepherd dog club or the Rottweiler club or the Golden Retriever club or whatever. So they don't allow any other breeds to come in and train, or perhaps they do, but because it's called this type of breed of dog club,
It's not inviting.
No.
Yeah, like that's not inviting, right? Like if you sit, like for instance, not too far from here, I think there's like I think it's the Croatian Club of Melbourne, right? And it's like, I wonder what it would be like to go. Like, because I like food. Maybe they do beautiful food. I know they like beer. I'm in, right?
That's it.
But it's like,
But I'm New Zealander.
I'm a Kiwi living in Australia. Maybe it's not my jam. So I think that happens. So a single breed specific club, often we'll see those dogs don't gel with other types of dogs because they're never necessarily around them. So I think that can be an issue. I think that people remember old school group classes where, there's 20 dogs in a line and it looks like this military precision of like, heal your dog. And like, so people have this conception about a group class as well. So I think that could be problematic as well. So that would be a couple of things that we could debunk. What else was on the list? Because let's debunk.
Yeah, boring or...
Yeah.
Oh, they're not boring. Like a group class to me, it's the highlight of my week. Like I love it. Like our clients come down. We were at, I'll tell another story if I can. So we went to the IACP conference, which is the International Association of Canine Professionals, right? It's a worldwide organization, but a lot of the members are in America, and that's kind of where they have their conference each year. And when we went over, it was just after Tyler had actually been out to Australia. So Kat and I went over to the conference, and we've been a couple of times now. But we were standing around. We'd just come out of a guest speaker. We were listening to that, and there were a few people talking, and some very, very big names in the industry. Tyler was there. Chad Mackin was there. So, guys who have been around dog training for a long time. And I was sort of talking about group classes and sort of saying, what do you think is the main thing that your client should leave with after a group class? Like if there's one thing, what are they leaving with, And they're sort of saying, well, I think it's the leash handling. I think it's, this, and I think it's that. And there's this pause, and we're like, I think it should be that they had fun. And they turn around and they look at us, right? And we're like, if they leave with leash handling, but they're like, that was boring with just the leash handling, they're not going to come back. But if they're like, hey, that was fun, I really enjoyed that. Like the person presenting the class was engaging, everybody was enjoying themselves. I like that. That's cool. And then they come back, and then they come back, and then they come back, right? And we have, at our club, we've got a few different memberships where people can sign up. But we did this thing not last year, the year before, I think it was. And we just made 2 of our clients, our long-term clients, lifetime members. So these guys have trained multiple dogs with us. They've been with us for, 10 and 15 years.
That's amazing.
We've just made them, these 2 people specifically, John, and I'll call her Giggles because all she does is giggle. So I actually didn't know her real name for about 3 years. I just call her Giggles. So I still call her Giggles. So these 2 people are now life members. But Giggles was training at another club, and she is hilarious, and she loves her golden retrievers. So she had this she just lost a golden retriever. She just got a new one. She went to her old club, and one of the guys down at the club was like really, really rough with her dog. And she was like, oh, that's it. Like, I'm out of the dog world, like I'll just sit at home with my dog, and that's kind of it. And she drove, just by chance, she drove past us the same day, drove past us as we were running our group classes. And she pulled in, and Kat went up and spoke to her, and she said, "Hi, how are you?" She's like, "I was just driving past, and I just saw everyone. It looked like everybody's having fun." And we just went, "We are," And so she literally came down on the field that day. She left feeling loads better than what she did at the other club, and she continues to train. And she's also one of these people that helps the culture of what we do, because she's a fun person and she enjoys, and she mentors all of these other people, who come down with their golden retrievers. And, so I think that's one of the most important things. Like, your classes should be fun. If we think back to teachers that we had at school, like, who were the best ones? Like, the strictest ones, the ones that knew the most, or the ones that were fun in class that you actually learned stuff, Like, those were the teachers to me that I enjoyed. The ones that were fun, you went, "Oh, that was awesome. I like that. Good sense of humor. That was a cool demonstration. It made me laugh." So I think, they should be fun for sure.
What's the average, like, how long does people generally stay with you guys?
It's a real big mix. Like, it really is, because we have clients come down and I'm like, "Why are you here? Like, your dog is phenomenally trained, right? And you go off and you compete with your dog and you win everything. And then you come back on the following Sunday and you're just hanging out with us." But that's the culture that I was talking about. Like, these guys come down. Like, I've got to be careful in the classes, because sometimes I'm like, "Hey, we need to go and do dog training. This isn't like the Mothers Club where we're all going to sit around and just tell stories all day." So, like, because that happens, right?
Right.
So, but that's also important times for us to have. So we get these guys who have been training. Like, we have dogs that stayed with us when they were puppies, and now they're 8. And they still come down. They might miss a couple of weeks. They might go off, but they just come back. They check in. They sign up. So that sort of thing happens. And then we'll get the people who come down and maybe they think it's just like puppy school where they do 4 or 5 weeks and then they go off, and then they come back. Maybe when there's some problems with the dog, and then they stay a bit longer and then they go off. So it's a massive mix. In saying that, I think the retention that we have is relatively good, but it's definitely a big mix for sure.
Yeah, I would say I find that the hardest part about group classes, even when I try to run it your style, because I feel like people have this expectation when they go to group class, right? Because I'm running it now as blocks of 5 weeks, and people expect, well, after 5 weeks I'm done. And I personally find it the hardest to train for precision with people, because they just don't see the value of it. Like, and I love your videos, and when I see all the dogs doing, like, it looks amazing, and I'm like, most of my beginner group with the cavoodles or the Shih Tzu Pomsky dogs, they're just like, "Nah, I'm done after 5 weeks." And I think I do fun classes, and I do a lot of games and stuff, but I think that is a misconception as well in group classes. Like, yeah, we're done after 5 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, how long someone runs something, right? So I wish we could break that more.
I think one of the things that we are lucky enough that we do relatively well, and again, like, it's hard, right? Like, you're doing it by yourself and like you're doing everything, right? And it's super hard. It's really, really hard. So we've been lucky where we've been able to put trainers on. So, when we first started, it was my wife, it was her mum who was doing reception. So even that extra pair of hands just to, take money, she didn't do anything else apart from know everybody's name, know their dog's name, and just take money and tick them off. They'd be like, "Hey, here's the C5 vaccination," and her name was Honey, and Honey's like, "That's not my section. Give that to Brent or Kat." Like, I don't do that part. But, then somebody would come down and they're like, "Hey, John, hi, Axel," and she would just know the names and write them down, whatever, right? So we were lucky with that. But the way our classes are structured is we do like the first timers beginners first, and then after that we've got the next level, and after that we've got the next level. So the people who are kind of leaving are then seeing the next stage of training.
Yeah,
and then the people who are kind of there, they see the next stage of training. So they're like, oh, that looks really good. And it's also one of the things that I say in my group classes all the time is like, you got to remember, like, obedience is there for a couple of reasons. One of them is so you've got this level of communication with your dog. The other one is so that you look cool to your friends. Like, you know, everyone's
party trick.
But I'm like, it's true, because people are like, watch my dog. Like, you know what it's like. Watch your dog. Yeah, what does your dog do? Oh, what? They do a sit and then they do shake hands. But like, if you can start to get your dog to recall,
wait for his food,
feed them food or whatever, right? Like, people are like, that's impressive, and they don't know how impressive things can be until they see it. And then as soon as you see it, you're like, oh wow, I love that. That's phenomenal. How'd you get your dog to do that? We're like, oh well, that's next week's class. You know, come on now.
Yeah.
So I think that definitely helps our retention, because if you know that there's more levels, you'll continue down more often than not. You'll continue down or up through those levels, right?
Yeah.
If it kind of stops, or if you can't see what's next or what's around the corner, I think sometimes that's where.
Yeah, because that's when people, I think, find it boring, because they're like, oh, we're practicing place command again. Like, we did this last week. I'm like, I know, but you're not just going to learn place in 1 hour on a Saturday. You know, you have to practice it again and again, and maybe this time we're throwing balls in the air while we do it, right? But you can't throw the balls in the air if your dog can't even do a place while you walk away 2 steps. So, you know, I think it's hard for people to realize that the goal is lots of mini steps before you get to that what you want. I guess that goes for everything in life, hey, but especially for dog training.
I talk about steps now. The way I use that analogy is like rungs of a ladder. Like, you have to climb rungs of the ladder to get to where you want to be. You can't like take 2 steps up and then just take a flying leap and hope you'll land up the top somewhere. Like, it just won't work. So I talk to my guys and I'm like, what we're trying to do is just climb rungs of the ladder. Like, we've got time. Don't rush it, because if you rush it, it's just you're gonna fall back down the bottom, right? So, you know, that sort of helps some people kind of formulate in their head, okay, well, what am I doing? Well, it's rungs on the ladder, and I just need to take my time and slowly go up it, you know? But if you're doing a 5-week course or an 8-week course or something, it is hard to sort of sit there and go, if you come back for the next one, this is what we're going to do, you know? It is tough to do. Like, I'm sure you can do it, though. So just put it out there. And I also think sometimes in a group class setting, if we can kind of get like a couple of little project dogs, and I've got this now, like, so you kind of know, like, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? And one of my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coaches, he's a black belt. He's very, very good at Jiu-Jitsu. He's a black belt in judo. Very intelligent person, very successful. And they have a dog called Dolly. And Dolly comes down now with their, you know, teenage son, who's a very mature boy. And all he wants to do is just tricks with this dog, right? So I'm teaching the class healing. And Lex is like, hey, Brent. I'm like, yes, mate. He's like, how do I get Dolly to walk between my legs and put her feet on my feet so we're going like...
I love that one.
Can we do the healing stuff? but like, everybody now sees this video that I got tagged in on Instagram that Karen put up of Lex, you know, of Dolly putting her feet on Lex, right? Just from the side, so not in the middle position or anything like that yet. But now I've got like 4 messages from people going, that's amazing. I'm going to do that. I'm like, what's the point of healing? That's ridiculous. Let's just do tricks.
I love trick. I used to run a trick training class, and that's just
but it's fun, you know. And yeah, that's part of it, right? Like, I think those are the things where that starts to create this, hey, what's next? Next is this fun thing, or next is this fun thing, you know?
Yeah.
And we've got to do a little bit of work, and then we can do something fun, and a little bit of work, and then we can do something fun. Kind of similar to dog training, right?
That's it. What do you think makes a good group class, and what should owners look for when they sign up somewhere?
I think a good way to do it is, will they allow you to go and watch? So if somebody calls and said, hey, can I come down and watch what you do? I always say yes. Because if I'm trying to hide something, I don't like that. So I'm like, yeah, man, come down, watch what we do. And then I make sure that they feel welcome. So I think that's important. Like, are you welcome to be there? You know, do they want you there? Are you a hindrance or not? You know, are you in it for the dog? Does it seem like the people running the class are in it for the dog, or are they just there to make money? You know, now this isn't always the case, because I know people run classes and they don't have their own dogs with them or whatever. But I also sort of sit there and go, what are their dogs like? You know, because we've had dogs that were, you know, for instance, we had a rescue, and he was a really, really nice boy. But if a person, specifically a man, would get too close, this dog would bark at you. And so people could look at that and go, oh, you can't even train your own dog, you know? But it's like, oh, but you should have seen what he used to be like, you know? And his obedience was beautiful. So I also think, if they've got a dog, are they kind of doing what you are asking them to do, or what you are asking your clients to do as well? So I think that's something, you know, like the same thing in jiu-jitsu, right? If I go to a jiu-jitsu school and I'm like, hey, man, like, can we roll with the teacher? And they're like, oh, no, like, my jiu-jitsu might break you because I'm so good. It's like, oh, okay, that's kind of a bit magical and woo-woo, right? So, you know, I kind of want to see a little bit of the proof for the pudding. But for me, I really want to see how the person is with the clients, how they are with the dogs. Are they sort of welcoming to people? And I guess in some way nowadays, I don't want to say what the reviews are like, but what's the feedback like?
Yeah.
You know, because we all get feedback that's negative, right? Everybody gets it, because they're just dickheads. So you can't get away from that. There are just people that just don't like you, so they're just going to write whatever. But do people come and defend you? Or do they also sit there and you scroll past that and there, you know, 30 or 5 or 10 or 6 other positive reviews where going, hey, I love this class. It was so good for me and my dog. You know, so I also think just checking those sorts of things out as well. I think that's quite good, you know, good to do.
Yeah. And so with puppy classes, do you think that they're, like, what's your opinion on them? Do you think that puppy play is essential in puppy classes? And do you think that vet, like all the big box companies, should be cause more harm than good for puppy classes?
I think it depends on the puppy, because I've seen puppies that have gone to those, like that sort of a puppy free-for-all, we can call it, and just come out like no problems. I think sometimes where it goes wrong is if you've got a dog who's too boisterous, they learn that this massively boisterous behavior gets these results that they want. And if you've got a dog that's a little bit too timid, this timidity just gets reinforced, because the boisterous ones go, I'll pick on that one because I get my feeling of being boisterous and tough and rumbles. And then this little whatever, the other timid dog kind of gets this timidity reinforced, because it's like this fun dog is just jumping all over them, right? So I think in a school where you are running this puppy free-for-all, I think you've really got to manage that super carefully. So for me, it's not what we do. We don't do dog-to-dog socialization.
Neither do I.
I think the key to having a nice balanced dog is finding other people with nice balanced dogs and having them catch up and be social together. You know, it doesn't mean that they've got to be off lead and running around. Why can't we just catch up and go for a walk so my dog is used to being around you?
That's
You know, it's the same sort of thing of like a human relationship, you know, like I want my dog to be with me and not being like a hussy and running off and being with every other dog in the world. Like, hey, this is dating and dogs again, right? It's you and me. So I think I think sometimes when it's like a dog-to-dog free-for-all, very, very, very skilled trainers can make that happen, but not everywhere, you know? And I think you've got to really, I wouldn't put my puppy in that situation. Like our Rottweiler, our current Rottweiler, Mr. Smith, we got him right at the start of COVID in Melbourne, right, which was a terrible and tough time. So we had to make sure that we got him out and about, but he was, as a, let's say, a 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-week-old puppy, he was socializing with a 3-year-old golden retriever. He was socializing with a 12-month-old German Shepherd. He was playing with at 4, 5, 6 months, he was playing with a 3-year-old Leonberger. So big dogs, right? But they're socially responsible dogs. They're not idiots. Yeah. If he got out of line, they go, hey, you got to stop that. Yeah. Too much, you know. And like my little Malinois, she's good like that. I would not say that she's great with dogs, but she doesn't care about other dogs. She'll leave other dogs. She won't chase other dogs. She's never had a dog fight. But if a puppy gets in her face, she'll just go, hey, knock it off. And the puppy's like, oh, okay. So those sorts of things are beautiful. She doesn't want to run around and play with other dogs. Her and Mr. Smith, they play beautifully at this game that they have both come up with and invented and went, I'm comfortable playing. It's almost like we play MMA. Like Mr. Smith walks past, she bites him on the face. They think it's the best day ever. Yeah. And like, that's the game, right? So those sorts of things, you can build these relationships with dogs, but when you're doing it with a puppy, I think you've got to be super careful. Yeah, I really do. And I think, I don't know who said this, Tyler or Michael Ellis, perhaps, I'm not sure. But it's like, you don't want to learn a driver teaching a learner driver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's also one of those things. If I'm trying to teach my puppy correct socialization,
they don't learn from other puppies.
Yeah.
I don't really want it to learn from another puppy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But in saying that, if I've got 2 puppies and they're both pretty good and I can monitor 2 puppies, cool, let's play. But if there's 8, oh, no thanks.
I think it's such a common misconception. It's another misconception about puppy class, I guess, because I get that a lot in my forms, you know, when people want to sign up, like, oh, I just want puppy socialization. And they're always happy when I don't do it, but there is this idea of like, oh, I get a puppy and they need to play. And then, or I get the people that have gone to the vet one or the animates one or whatever, and they're like, oh my God, that was so chaotic, we never went back. Or my puppy got bullied or whatever. And I wish that there was a change in that, because obviously the vets get the puppies in for vaccination. So they're like, oh, come and do a puppy class. I'm like, what did you actually, and not all of them, let's put it out there.
Yeah.
But what did you actually teach the owners with their puppies besides letting them go absolutely bonkers and get intimidated? Like the space is often tiny. So it's sitting like 12 adults and 6 puppies in this bedroom. And of course, nothing good is going to happen. Yeah.
I think so, yeah. For me, I when I get a puppy, I want to expose them to the things that I want to expose them to in the correct way. You know, And for instance, we have a really good friend of ours. She's in the Victorian Police Dog Squad. So she has a new Malinois puppy that she is training up, and he's still young. He's still, I don't know, 4 months old, we'll say, maybe a smidge older. But he came and stayed with us for the night, and he was in and around our dogs. He was with Mr. Smith and he was with Puppy. And, this is strictly for dog training. We took him down to the local brewery. We had a beer down there, just for socialization, as you do. And so, like, just getting him out and about and those sorts of things. And you've got to have those people, I think, that you can trust where you could do that with your puppy. Because the way that I live with my puppy and somebody else lives with theirs, if you can expose your puppy to these sorts of things, I think that's so beneficial for them. But that puppy coming here and staying with us for a night was not overwhelmed at any stage by our dogs, wasn't overwhelmed in any of the places that we took them, So I think that's what's important, is making sure that they can survive and be confident through those times. And if it's, 8 puppies playing, and it's not a size thing either, right? Like, your little Maltese Terrier could be like the bratty, it's a terrier. I'm going to chase the things, So, and then you've got a beautiful golden retriever who's just like, no, don't chase me, fall over. So these are little things, and, it's not a size thing. It's not a breed thing. It's a personality trait. And I want to make them confident. And as I say, like, don't have a learner driver teaching a learner driver, or don't have a puppy teaching a puppy how to correctly socialize, because they don't know how to do it. They're just little bitey machines.
Yeah. And I think here you see it a lot, because people get puppies, and there's a local doggy daycare that has a puppy group. And my God, they spend 8 hours a day in puppy group. And I'm just like, oh my God, you're setting this puppy up to fail. But people think it's the right thing, right? Because dogs love friends and be social and all that. When obviously, when you talk to dog trainers, we all want neutrality. I want, like, oh, can you be friendly when I need you to, but can you be calm in pretty much 99% of the situations? Like, we don't need to interact with everything we see. Just be okay with it.
Yeah. And like, I suppose in some ways, like, if you look at like raising a child, which, like, hand up, I haven't done, right? But if you consider what you do with your kids, it's like, let's take them to kindergarten, right? So you go to kindy, and then that's where they hang out with their friends for a period of time. Then you go and pick them up. Is that the best way to raise a kid? Like, I don't know, but like, you see, like, there's a lot of people homeschooling and that sort of thing now, right? And we enjoy camping and that sort of thing. We go out camping with our dogs. So we watch a lot of YouTube, and you see families out in caravans and campers traveling around Australia with these young kids. And these young kids are getting these experiences, being out and learning, and, whether it's swimming or whether it's in the outback or whether it's whatever it might be, mixing with different kids from different areas, older kids, younger kids, adults. And I've got to learn from all of these different people, not just 3-year-olds or not just 4-year-olds or not just 7-year-olds, So these mixed experiences that I see these kids getting. And then it's cool because some of these guys we've been watching for 4 or 5 years, and they started when they're 7 and now they're 12. And you listen to them speaking, like, whew, these kids got it together, like they've seen some stuff.
Yeah. So less sheltered but safe. It's like, let's go see the world, and but we don't run at everyone, because there is something like stranger danger, guys. I
think that's an interesting thing. So perhaps that's where this thing of like, let's take all the puppies to puppy school. Perhaps that's where the conditioning comes from. Let's take our kids to kindergarten. So it's the same type of thing where we just go drop them off, like, life's good, as opposed to, well, is this the best use of of their time, So I don't know. That's just something that popped in my head, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll probably have to add some nuance to that, because otherwise we have the people that say like, yeah, but I can't look after my kid 24/7.
Oh,
And it's fair
absolutely.
enough.
Yeah, for sure. And as I said, right, like, hand up, I haven't raised a kid, so don't listen to me on raising kids at all. Like, I know nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I went to primary school and I went to kindergarten, and I'm kind of okay for the most part.
Yeah.
But I do think that given the means and the ability to do it, if I had a kid now, 100%, if I could, I'd be traveling around the world and taking my kid with me and homeschooling. I still got to do lessons, but life experience, I think, counts for loads. And that's what I want to do with my puppy. Like, I take my puppy around their world and expose them to all the things that I want to expose them to in this beautiful, safe, confidence-building way to expose them to the world, right?
And slowly. I think that's a massive one. I feel like people with new puppies, they're excited and they do everything at once. And everything is high energy. Whoa! So then, once the cute puppy stage is done and the dog hits like 6 months, that's when it's not so cute anymore to take everywhere. But the dog's like, let's go, high energy, let's do everything. It's like, no, you're not wanted like that anymore now. It's not cute anymore if you jump on people or play like this. So,
I also want my dog to learn how to be bored. I think that's
absolutely. It's massive.
Yeah. I recently was over in Adelaide, ran a workshop and seminar, and I also ran a couple of group classes for these guys over in Adelaide too. And one of the girls over there, she also runs group classes, right? She's really cool. And she's got her dog down in this drop, and she's running around, she's jumping over a dog, and she's throwing balls, and she's juggling food, and she's doing these massive, awesome, high-level distractions, right? And I'm like, that's really good. I'm like, hey, go and stand in front of your dog 2 meters away and just do nothing. Just stand there. So she did it. And like the dog was like, I don't know what this is. And the dog literally just got up and walked to her, And it's like the dog just hadn't seen that picture of, hey, can we just hang out and be bored where there's nothing happening? So this high level stimulation that the dog gets used to is like, oh, yeah, I can focus in this. But when there's nothing going on, it's like, I don't know what to do. So I also want my dog to have that opposite of like, hey, like, no, we're just going to chill out and do nothing today. Or if there are times where 100% that is going to happen. So I think that's important as well. And doing group classes, what happens? We do some loose lead walking and we work on the sit. All right, guys, we're going to have a break for a few minutes. So now just chill out with your dogs. Yeah. And can that dog learn to do that in a group class scenario? I think it's super important that they can.
Same. I always do sit on a dog when I'm instructing. Everyone has to step on the lead, ignore your dog. Takes usually the first session and a half for people to stop fussing, but the difference it makes, you just suddenly see everyone go zen, and it's just like when I'm talking, just listen to me, like just leave your dog be, and you just I love that bit. That's probably one of my favorite things to see happening in group class, where you go from puppies or dogs that are like whoa to okay, cool, I just sit here now and I'll wait. It's
that's cool. It's good.
And what I love, like just to add to that, is like when I do have someone come to class again and with new people, that's the first thing that they do. They're like, okay, cool, this is what I do. So then I use them as an example. So I have a look at that person over there. They're stepping on the lead. I want everyone to do that. So everyone's dog is as calm as that dog, And then, I love that bit. And it is so important to teach your dog to be bored. Like the enrichment world has gone a little bit overboard, I think. Like I love enrichment, but now we've enriched too much.
Yes, maybe it's a little bit like us with screen time on our phones, right? Like, there's too much phone time enrichment. And then putting it down is pretty hard. So I think that kind of happens with our dogs, where we feel that they need to be stimulated the whole time, as opposed to, hey, we're just going to chill out and like we're just going to Netflix and chill today,
Yeah, you get the owners like, oh, but I walk my dog for 3 hours and then we play the ball, but then they're just looking at me. They just won't go and lie down. I'm like, we haven't taught your dog to lie down. You've just taught them to be a bit of an addict to keep going.
Yeah. I always I get this quite a lot, and people are like, I walk my dog twice a day for an hour and they still want to do stuff. I'm like, yeah, but you're making them fitter. Like, yeah, you want to mentally tire the dog out, not like make them fit, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah. Like keep them healthy, but if they need an hour and you exercise them for an hour, then tomorrow they need an hour 10, and now they need an hour 20. Now they need 2 hours of exercise every day. And now it's like
a little marathon runner.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, and you get the Kelpie or you get the Malinois or you get that dog that kind of can do it.
Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like this, I've got 2 full-time jobs now.
Yeah, that's it. All right. I love that. That was really helpful. I think owners will really enjoy listening to this. Thank you so much for that.